Stories making headlines in our news today. Economist Chibamba Kanyama has observed the need to revisit the Financial Intelligence Center Act of 2016 in order to clearly define its mandate. Political analyst Chris Zimba has expressed concern that political violence that started on a lighter note has grown to what he has termed as aggravated political violence. Now the news in detail. Economist Chibamba Kanyama has observed the need to revisit the Financial Intelligence Center Act of 2016 in order to clearly define its mandate. Mr. Kanyama, who is also Bridges Limited Managing Consultant, tells QTV News that the nation should be careful and not release information that may compromise the confidence of investors, which may worry them that their investment is not safe. Mr. Kanyama has also advised the government that if they have issues with the center, it is important to engage FIC indoors and not publicly. He says that the government created the FIC, and so if they feel the center is closing its limit, it is important that the act that establishes this institution is revisited.
My personal advice is that that kind of engagement be kept out of the public. Let them sort it out inside doors, close the doors, and see the way forward. We don't want to hear that because there is an impact here. The Zambian economy is largely run by portfolio investors, and you know the nature of portfolio investors. These are people who are in the money markets, in the treasury bills, and the moment they hear information about, say, money laundering or that there are investigations, they get concerned. One, they want to know whether it is part of their investments that are being affected. So that concerns them already. They want to operate in an environment where there is financial security. They are aware about the Bank of Zambia and anti-money laundering unit that exists. So when they are investing in Zambia, they're actually investing in a safe haven where there are no financial crimes being committed. So when we publicize any kind of information like that, we should be fully aware about the potential repercussions to these portfolio investors, because they want to know, does it concern us? Will our money be affected? Are we going to get a return to our investment? Is our money at risk? So these are some of kind of issues that should be factored into as we publicize any information to do with potential financial crime.
Political analyst Chris Zimba has expressed concern that political violence that started on a lighter note has grown to what he has termed as aggravated political violence. Mr. Zimba tells QTV News that if this issue is not addressed now, the people of Zambia will be traumatized during the 2021 general election because of political violence. Mr. Zimba says that violence has persisted in the country because of lack of political will from political leaders to end the vice. He says there is need for the leaders to sit down and sort out this matter before the 2021 general elections.
A by-election, for example, clearly speaks to the fact that there is nothing Christian much talk about our democracy and our politics because of the blood, because of the insults, because even in some cases, even death we record when we are just choosing a mere political officer to take up either a ward position or a parliamentary position. It's very unfortunate, and my appeal once more is that let us all declare political ceasefire in terms of political violence. It will start from Edgar Lungu, it will start from HH, it will start from GBM, it will start from Mama Inonge Wina, the vice president, it will start from Nevas Mumbai, it will start from Mutati, it will start from Winter Kabimba or Fred Membe. Let Edith Nawakwe speak, let Erash Pimo speak. If these leaders of political parties begin to speak peace and act peace, Zambia is ready to go in 2021 to hold a peaceful, credible and fair election. If they are doing the opposite, they are doing rhetorics, and they are doing some sort of statements, I can assure you, 2021 will be very difficult and very traumatizing for the Zambian people, because this level of political violence is quite scary.
The Consumer Unit Trust Society, CATS International Zambia, has expressed concern over the increasing cases of counterfeit products on the Zambian market. CATS Zambia Center Coordinator Chanai Mukumba says that counterfeit goods pose health risks on the consumers. Ms. Mukumba says it is important that relevant government agencies ensure that some products are removed from the shelves because of their health implications on the consumers. She says that counterfeit goods are also bad for the economy, and hence the need to allow such products on the market.
I have seen that there has been a number of complaints from consumers about the fact that there seems to be an increased proliferation of counterfeit products on the market. This is an issue of concern for us because particularly from when you're looking at foods that have very clear sort of um, health reflections on consumers. This obviously jeopardizes, the safety of the consumer. And so I think us as CUTS, one of the recommendations that we're always making is that it's important for the regulatory institutions that are involved in overseeing the particular sectors in the market. It's important for them, to double down on their efforts to make sure that, these products are not on the market and make sure that the interest of consumers are safeguarded. Another point that we also tend to raise is that often you tend to find that these regulatory institutions, however, have limited resources. We're talking about financial and human resources. So consumers themselves actually also have a role to play in identifying many of these products and then communicating and placing complaints to these regulatory institutions that they can then come in and take a look at essentially what will have been put in place. So I think from us, one of the recommendations we make is it's important for regulators to take a look at what's being done, but also for consumers to be vigilant, to make sure that they're aware and taking a look at the different labels that are on these goods, and then if they come across anything that's counterfeit, report it immediately to make sure that the safety of other consumers is not jeopardized.
The United, Peaceful and Prosperous Zambia UPPZ President Charles Chanda says that the continued sale of strategic institutions by the government proves that the government is bankrupt. Mr. Chanda says that what is shocking the most is the fact that the government is selling these assets to foreigners. Mr. Chanda says that this kind of behavior being portrayed by the ruling government should not be tolerated by the Zambian people. He says the Patriotic Front, PF, together with the former ruling party, that is the Movement for Multi-Party Democracy, have converted all primary schools into secondary schools. As a result of that, there has been a shortage of schools in the country.
This government is proving to be very hungry and very bankrupt. How do you start selling learning institutions? You sold NRDC, you sold Jacaranda, you sold Chimbokaila, you have sold Kalingalinga police station. And the problem I'm having is that we are selling all these things to foreigners. Are you telling us that there are no able Zambians who can buy those things? How do you classify, how do you justify that this institution is idle? Does it make any sense? The PF government, together with their MMD colleagues, they have converted all primary schools into secondary schools. We have a shortage of schools in Zambia.
Government has been called upon to prioritize agriculture in its economic and developmental agenda. MMD National Secretary Raphael Nakachinda is urging government through the Ministry of Finance to set aside enough resources for investment in the agricultural sector. Mr. Nakachinda says that the agricultural sector will never develop if government is to continue to make a pronouncement of how to grow the sector for the sole purpose of rhetoric. In an interview with QTV News, Mr. Nakachinda states that funding the agricultural sector adequately should entail prompt and efficient implementation of the policies in the sector. Mr. Nakachinda says that this should include activation of the laid out systems for the delivery of farming inputs to farmers under the Farmer Input Support Program on time.
Calling on government to make sure that they prioritize agriculture, especially at this particular point. The Minister of Finance to pump in enough money so that we don't just have pronouncements for purposes of rhetoric that government is going to take these measures. Let it be backed with provision of finances in the agriculture sector under the Ministry of Agriculture, so that there is, prompt and early implementation of those policies.
The Young African Leaders Initiative Yearly Governance Advisor Isaac Mwanza has welcomed the position of the Electoral Commission of Zambia, ECZ, to announce the election date for the mayoral and council chairpersons elections in Lusaka and other 6 districts after both ECZ and the Attorney General filed their positions on serving councillors and deputy mayors contesting the forthcoming elections. Mr. Mwanza, who is a second applicant in this matter, says the position by ECZ filed before the Concord and the announcement of election dates has created a level playing field for serving councillors, deputy mayor, vice council chairperson, and now serving councillors to contest mayoral and council chairpersons elections in 6 affected districts without requiring councillors to resign their seats. Mr. Mwanza says ECZ has made it clear that only MPs are not eligible to contest the elections. He says that this means that ECZ will thus accept nomination papers from anyone, that is including councillors, deputy mayors, and vice council chairpersons who meet the qualifications in Article 70 to contest as mayors as long as one is not an MP. He adds that this is good position by ECZ as it settles one question that should have taken long to decide by the courts. Mr. Mwanza says that the court will now only have a question to decide whether a serving ward-based councillor who wins mayor or council chairperson elections ought to resign his or her seat afterwards.
It means that when they win their positions, we are going to now argue before the court that they can only relinquish their seats. Once they win their positions become vacant automatically by the operation of the law that they have ascended to a full-time officer as the mayor of a city or a council chairperson. So I wish to state clearly that I think the political playing field has been leveled. Councillors and non-councillors now can apply to their political parties, and political parties must be able to consider them for these positions and give them equal chances. Look at the experiences the councillors have. Look at the other people also who want to contest to the experiences they have in running local government, so that they can make a better decision. To us, I think that we welcome the decision that ECZ has filed in the Constitutional Court, and we are looking forward to the time that when we can argue these matters in court and be able to bring it to a conclusive end.
The Zambian youth in the fight against corruption, ZIAFAC, has warned of an emerging state capture in the country, which it says is if left unchecked, would lead to the collapse of vital institutions in the country. The organization notes that the recent engagement between UPND and the Judicial Complaints Authority, JCA, in which a position was held to the effect that the Constitutional Court in regards to the presidential petition case filed by UPND didn't exhaust the 14 days as prescribed in the Constitution of Zambia is in hearing the matter. ZIAFAC Executive Director Maurice Malambo tells QTV News that the engagement and the subsequent position by the JCA, although this engagement was of no legal consequence, however, was ultra vires the law. Mr. Malambo says another classical example in the conduct by the Financial Intelligence Center, which made the engagement with the public in its respect to capture intelligence information, defying the law by which it was created and within which it ought to operate. He says that this reduced itself to operating like a pressure group or whistleblower, contrary to the scope of its legal mandate. Mr. Malambo says if such matters are not kept in check, can lead to the gradual collapse of institutions, the general degree of failure to observe the law, and the net effect being what is referred to as a failed state.
Yes, Zambia, like any other country, has some levels of corruption that needs to be dealt with, prosecuted, if where possible. However, to use the fight against corruption as a political trump card or political capital, where institutions of the state are working in collusion with political movements aimed at dislodging a government, is not right. Because you can manage to dislodge a government, but then the same method by which you dislodge the government may continue. And we must remember that governance wherever you go in the country, wherever you go in the world, is fundamentally anchored on two facets: constitutionalism and institutions, meaning that it is anchored on the law and state apparatus, which happens to be institutions.
Now, Zambia has been selected to participate at the largest tourism fair in the Netherlands to showcase its tourism potential to tap in, as seen by the increasing number of European tourists visiting the country. The tourism industry has become a major and growing industry in Zambia, and the fair in the Netherlands aims at allowing the country to showcase its potential and reach out to the 1,000 Europeans who will be visiting Zambian stands. The fair will be held in the city of Vakenberg, where travel agencies and cultural associations from all over the world gather from 9th to 13th January 2019. Zambia Embassy in the Benelux region charged the affairs. Henry Ngilazi said both official tourism bodies and private organizations may benefit from the sponsored tourism fair, where special rates will also be given. Ms. Ngilazi has called on Zambian tourism bodies to take advantage of this event because the tourism industry is a major and growing industry with a significant contribution to Zambia's economy, second only to the agricultural sector. He says that the growth of Zambia's tourism industry could have a significant impact on the formal and informal employment and incomes, particularly in rural areas. Ms. Angelazi says the Zambian emission in Brussels, which is also accredited to the Benelux region, that is Belgium, Netherlands, and Luxembourg, will work closely with the Zambia Tourism Agency, ZTA, and the Zambia Development Agency, ZDA, in the planning and preparations for the affair in order to ensure that the country fully participates. The Netherlands Fair ranks among the most relevant tourism affairs in Europe and combines both trade days and consumer days, attracting over 100,000 visitors. Last year alone, over 1,000 exhibitors from 119 countries, with each spending an average of €3,200, participated in the Netherlands Tourism Fair. This is contained in a statement issued to QTV News by Embassy, the Republic of Zambia in Belgium, First Secretary, Press and Public Relations, Phyllis Chilekwa. Zambia's ambassador to Ethiopia, Susan Sikaneta, says that Zambia's ratification of the African Charter of Governance, Election and Human Rights is a clear indication of government's resolve of upholding tenets of democracy and good governance. Speaking when a consortium of civil society organizations in Africa under the auspices of Action Aid paid a courtesy call on her, Ms. Sikaneta said Zambia was amongst countries that had ratified the important charter. Ms. Sikaneta has also commended Action Aid for the work it is doing and emphasized the need for civil society organizations in Zambia to take a leading role in helping popularize the programs of the African Union, especially Agenda 2063. She has disclosed that Zambia will assume the chairmanship of the Peace and Security Council this August, and that the charter needs to be strengthened so that progress made on it so far by African member states can be enhanced. Ms. Kaneta says there are loopholes which need to be sealed to allow for greater respect for constitutionalism, observance of human rights, rule of law, electoral rules, as well as deal with a deficit in democracy and governance. And Action Aid Zambia Governance Program Manager Msonda Kabinga said Zambia has done a good job in integrating the African Charter on Governance, Election and Human Rights in the country's national development agenda. He says what government needs to do is to roll out the implementation agenda of the Charter. This is contained in a statement issued to QTV News by Embassy of the Republic of Zambia in Ethiopia, First Secretary for Press, Tourism, Initu Mwanza. Government has reaffirmed its commitment to promoting science and mathematics in all public schools. Ministry of General Education National Science Center Assistant Director James Chongo says government puts emphasis on teaching of science and mathematics in schools. Mr. Chongo says the government recognizes science as hallmark for developing the country and that the foundation to this is with junior scientists in schools. He was speaking this morning in Lusaka when he officiated at the Horizon School 2018 Independent Schools Association of Zambia, ISCSZ Secondary Schools Midlands Science Fair.
This is a very important event in the calendar of SARS and the government of the Republic of Zambia. The government of Zambia has put a lot of emphasis on the teaching of science, mathematics, and information computer technology, ICT, in all our schools in the country. It is very significant to note that science is a hallmark for any developing country, and that the foundation to this technological advancement starts with the junior scientists like yourselves.
And Mr. Chongo has commended Horizon School for hosting the secondary schools science fair. He says government will continue giving the necessary attention to all schools regardless of where they are located and regardless of whether they are private or government owned. Mr. Chongo, who toured the part of the science and mathematics projects at the fair, hoped that such commitment of ISCSZ to promoting science and mathematics will go a long way.
The government of the Republic of Zambia has a special place for all the schools and have been supporting the learners in science and mathematics. Through the National Science Center, I'm happy to say that we thank you for your great effort in hosting this event. The center will always be available to render its support to you towards the scientific projects and any other support that you may wish to ask for at any time. Keep it up. Continue being a torchbearer in the country.
A total of 8 ISCSZ schools participated in the science fair. And finally, in our news, cotton, textiles and garments sector representative Mabin Muyanu has called on government to put in place measures that will encourage the growth of the cotton, textiles and garment industry in the country. Mr. Muyanu says that the sector has been neglected and the increase in imported clothes and garments has overshadowed the growth of the sector. He states that most cotton farmers do not have capacity to produce cotton at a large scale because they do not have market to retain what they put in. He says that the same is the situation for those in the garments and textile industry. Lack of market due to imported garments is hindering their growth. He has since noted the need for government to incentivize cotton farmers who will sell their cotton to the textiles industry, which will in turn sell to the government industries. He, however, states that the governments can only buy from the textile industry on a large scale if they have market to sell their garments. He is of the view that if the right policies and incentives are put in place and given to the cotton, textile and garment sector, the country will have clothes sold at cheaper prices.
The challenge that we are facing in Zambia is because we have neglected our own sector, which is an important sector. As a result of the second-hand clothing that has mushroomed in Zambia, and it has frustrated a lot of farmers who used to produce cotton producers, cotton farmers, because the farmers, they don't have the market to supply their cotton where they can they sell their cotton. And also the textile have no market as well. So the garments, they don't have the source of raw material. Now, for us to correct the system, we need first to go back to plead to our farmers the government should take a little bit of pause. We go and speak to our farmers, and we give them some incentives as they produce their cotton. And then after that, we go back to our textile, and we give them incentives.
Top stories in our news once again. Economist Chibamba Kanyama has observed the need to revisit the Financial Intelligence Center Act of 2016 in order to clearly define its mandate. Political analyst Chris Zimba has expressed concern that political violence that started on a lighter note has grown to what he has termed as aggravated political violence. On that note, we end the news. For these and many other stories, you can visit our website, qfmzambia.com. And of course, don't forget to join us tomorrow